Okay, welcome back, coaches across Canada. It's another edition of 10 Questions with Powered by Honda. We're extremely excited today. I think for the first time, we have a member of the college world and the college landscape as it relates to college baseball in the U.S. Please welcome head coach of the University of Tennessee, Tony Vitello. Tony, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
So prior to his work with the University of Tennessee, Tony was with the University of Arkansas. He's a recruiting extraordinaire, well regarded in his industry and amongst his peers for his ability to evaluate talent. To date, Tony has signed and developed 6 first-round MLB draft picks. And last year, University of Tennessee was ranked 11th in the country in 2020. That was the highest since 2007. All right, Tony, so we'll get right into it. Mark from Vaughan asks, how do you organize recruiting with so many players, literally across countries, and talent available? Is it hard comparing players from different areas?
Yeah, it certainly is. I think it's hard comparing players in our sport more than any other. Basketball, if you can shoot, you can shoot. Football, if you're 300 pounds, you can block guys, you can block guys. There's just so many moving parts, especially with the one part being a baseball flying out of guys' arms and guys trying to hit it. There's just so much variance. It's no disrespect to those other sports. Combine that with the fact that now our recruiting calendar or timeline, the way things go down for families, for programs, has just become chaos. So organization is almost a word you throw out. Obviously, you want to be organized and keeping notes and keeping track of guys. But it literally could be a deal where any kid that we're recruiting right now could call me during this Zoom call and say, I want to commit, or I'm going to commit somewhere else, or my family and I decided we don't want to make a decision for another year. So it's one of those things where you embrace the chaos, if that's the right cliche to use, and understand that there are a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of really good players out there, but there's also a lot of really good schools. I've been fortunate enough to work at 4 really good ones. And so the only thing left to do is go see all these good players, and you'll probably end up with a few matches. And, a few of those guys worked out to be superstars, like you said. But again, from both sides, there's an awful lot of good players. There's an awful lot of good programs that colleges are investing money in. So if everybody's working hard, everybody will be happy at the end of the day to some extent.
Talking about goal setting, how do you help your players set goals? Does goal setting or the approach to goal setting change as players get older?
Yeah, no, I think the first thing is an overly simple answer is just to get them to set the goals. Many people are about to say when January 1st rolls around, I'm going to work out, or this is my New Year's resolution, but more of them will go unfulfilled or unexecuted than will be the other way. So the big thing is just to get them to set them and ask them to write them down or present them even just a text message. But Stanford was actually a university that I know did research that showed if you actually write down a goal, it's X amount of times, much, much more likely to actually happen. And then the other thing we work with our players on, and I think all kids should understand, is within goals, you need to have a process goal. So for just an average citizen, most of these guys are trying to put on weight, but let's just say an average citizen that enjoyed the holidays in the States, they may say they want to lose 5 pounds in 2021. Well, that's the goal. What is the process goal or goals you have to actually achieve that? So I'm going to get up and run every morning would be a process goal. So you hate to overcomplicate it, but actually getting to do it and actually understand it is really where we come in and assisting our players.
And then do you check in on those goals periodically as time's going by to say, hey, you said you were going to do this. How's this going right now?
Yeah, certainly. And nowadays, we are dealing with COVID, but nowadays with text messages, it's easy. Meeting in person is much, much better. But if it's a simple goal of, I wanted to get better at bunting balls on the third base side of the field, you just grab the kid aside, or, I'm at lunch and it pops into my head. I can text them and say, where are you at with this? Or are we ready to move on to now doing the first base side too? Because you've gotten pretty good at the third base side. So, with communication nowadays, Zoom calls, whatever, I think it's important to revisit them. And then also guys should have goals that they can meet that are realistic so that you can set new goals every whatever it might be. I hate to put on a hard line date on it every 3 months or whatever it might be, but these should be goals that are attainable and can be built on after they're achieved. Okay, what's the next thing?
When you first meet a potential recruit, is there something that they can say or a way that they can carry themselves that makes them stand out and be memorable for you?
Yeah, I mean, you can be memorable in a good way and a bad way. And
Let's talk about the good way today.
yeah, yeah. Well, step one is, very simple. Be respectful of your parents. It says a lot about a kid. First of all, it's the right thing to do, obviously. But if you show sign of disrespect there, those are the people in our sport. You know how expensive our sport is. And also, you know how much travel is required, in particular, kids from Canada. So any family member that's supporting that deserves your appreciation. But also, if you're not willing to show respect there and appreciation, what says you're going to show respect and appreciation to the people that work with you here? And it's not just the coaching staff, but academic support, the trainer, the strength coach. So that's a big thing. That's on the front end. On the back end, one piece of advice that's, again, overly simple, but I would recommend everybody have a go-to question. Anyone that goes to an interview for a business job or an internship or goes on a recruiting visit, it's inevitable. The person in charge or the coach running the visit is going to say, do you have any questions for me? And it's good to have something to go to. It makes a good impression on that first occasion to have something. And hey, you can ask everyone you ever meet in baseball the same question. Just make it your go-to one that you end up showing that you can relate and you're thinking your way through the deal instead of just being a robot and not having any personality.
What is something, I think in Canada, we got a lot of people that are going through the college recruitment process for the very first time. They probably didn't have a sibling that went through it for a different sport. What is something that you wished parents of recruits knew going into this process or had a window into that would maybe help grease those wheels in terms of the recruitment process?
Well, first things first, I think everyone will enjoy hearing this. Understand whether you're from Canada or Australia or the United States, everybody's in the same boat. No one knows what the heck's going on. And I say that, facetiously or joking a little bit, but also I'm dead serious, especially in COVID times, but also in regular times, they're changing the rules consistently. And again, it's just seems to be really chaotic in our sport. And the partial scholarships are really what makes it confusing for families and for coaches sometimes too. So just because you feel like you're a little lost or we don't know what to do, don't be afraid to ask questions and don't cower in certain situations, because I guarantee you, which is hard to guarantee things, you are in a much bigger boat than the people that know what's going on. And, sometimes there's a family that's already had two older brothers go through the process or a younger dad that was a Division I athlete or something. But that's kind of step one, is recognize that. And then once you realize, okay, this is a topic that's kind of tough to gather info and I don't know that much about it, then just get active. Again, don't be shy about asking questions. Maybe research here or there, or find somebody that's been through the process and figure out a little bit of a blueprint. But also, again, just kind of accept the fact that there really is no blueprint. I know I used that word earlier, but there is no exact science to the way this is going on. So create your own formula. Every program is at a different point. I mean, we're now in year 4 for us. So different than when we first got the job. And then some kids too. I mean, Dustin May is a kid that I saw in high school, didn't have the big bushy hair coming out of the hat and certainly wasn't throwing 100 miles an hour. But all of a sudden he spiked. And so he went from a slender kid that no one was interested into to, I believe, being a first rounder. And it was an extreme case, but his body was on a different timeline than his teammates. And so it's important for everyone to kind of recognize it's a tough subject. Try and gather some information and then come up with your own plan. Don't see on Twitter, 3 guys from Canada just committed, so now I need to commit somewhere. I need to be in a hurry. You might be on a different timeline. So it's important to kind of come up with your own formula. And like anything that's worth achieving, you're not going to be able to do it on your own. So don't be afraid to really rely on resources, whether it's looking up YouTube videos or asking questions.
Sometimes in our world, we see players committing as early as 15 years old. For you as a head coach, does the philosophy change? Is it, let's take the best player, or let's find a player who can commit, or the best player to commit to, versus let me try and build out a lineup 3 and 4 or 5 years down the road? Can you maybe talk a little bit how you balance that?
Sure. Yeah, you watch some NFL drafts or MLB drafts or NHL drafts, and the announcers say, well, this was the best available. So that's why they drafted the guy. It's not because they had a need. And then, other teams, they really need a quarterback or they really need a catcher. So they're very specific in their formula. I think, like anything, it's an easy way out for me, but I think, like anything, it's always a mesh of a couple, 2 or 3 things. And if we see a kid out there that is incredibly athletic, and yeah, he plays the position similar to something we already have, but we feel like he's so athletic, it's too good to pass up on, I think we're going to jump on it, and so is everybody else. I can say, for the way we like to do things, is try and have somewhat of a system to where we can sit down with a family or have a Zoom call and say, this is the vision we have for your son. And it's not just to be piling on to, we've got a bunch of good players, we want to pile him on top of a bunch of others. When we first got here, it was kind of like that, but now it's a little more specific or strategic. And then as time goes on, things change. I mean, we have a kid that's one of the top rated players, if not the best in the country, that signed with us this fall. We recruited him as a shortstop. Now he's so dang big, he could probably play in AA baseball right now as a third baseman. So things change, and again, embrace the chaos, I guess, is what I'm going to lean on as a crutch during this.
I think we all are, Tony, so you're not alone there.
Good.
You hear the phrase, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. As a head coach, teaching and coaching and leading young athletes, do you find yourself at a crossroads sometimes when you have a player who has the talent but maybe isn't the greatest teammate, and you're trying to, or that player's competing for playing time or a roster spot with a player who is a great teammate and maybe the talent isn't quite there?
Right. Here's what I'll say is more applicable to maybe the people that are listening, because for each coach, it's going to be a little different. I mean, Bobby Knight was a coach, old school guy, basketball coach that younger kids probably don't know, but he was a dictator. And I was a fan, at least of most of what he did, but there was very little room for, if you're not on board with what we're doing, you can get out. I don't care how good you are. I think most coaches are going to vary and be willing to accept some things if they get some good out of it. So again, going back to my answer, that's more applicable to people listening, is life is not fair, and it's kind of merit based. So if you're in the hotel and you're making a disturbance or you do something wrong and you're the third string quarterback, your consequences probably are a lot rougher than if you're Tom Brady and you're in the hotel and for some reason you had a noise complaint, or I'm just trying to provide a quick example. So, if you're going to be a headache or you're going to be questionable in the classroom or have other character flaws, you dang sure better be able to do some things on the field that are unique, because there's got to be a reason for a coach to put up with some of these headaches. And I think most coaches get to a point where they feel like it's not worth it, regardless of how good you are. Goes without saying that as you move up each level, the on-field stuff is going to get tougher and tougher. So the in the dugout, in the locker room, off the field, in the classroom stuff are things that are a lot easier to ensure that are a positive on your resume. So why not do that? And then as the struggles come on the field, you'll have people that are much more likely to have your back, as opposed to saying, dude's not a good teammate and he quit hitting, let's just get rid of him.
So follow-up question to that, can you teach intangible skills, work ethic, resilience, accountability? Is that teachable?
Definitely. We all come from different backgrounds. And, there's a tale of two brothers that grew up in a, really rough background, and one uses an excuse to, this is why I can't achieve. And then the other one says, I basically came up from the gutter. Why would I not be a superstar achiever? Very short, synopsis of that, probably a poor one. But anyway, we all come from different backgrounds, and, there's nothing that says because your first 10 years of your life went this way, the next 5 have to go this way. Every day is, starts with the sun hopefully coming up, or it's hiding behind clouds, and you can do what you want with it. And I think it's important for kids to realize the more they do things, going back on the last question, the more they do things to make people a fan of theirs, like, man, this guy's always in a good mood, or he's always looking me in the eye when I'm coaching him and things like that, the more likely people are to go to bat for you and to try and help you. And I don't care how good you are. You can be Bryce Harper, Max Scherzer. The day is going to come where things are going tough for you, and you want people to have your back. And in order to do that, I think it's important to have some of those character traits where you got people on board. You don't need to be phony, and it's certainly not a presidential election where you're trying to get everybody's vote. But if you go about your business the right way, people are going to have your back, and they're going to want to improve your intangibles that you're talking about. Because I certainly think those can be improved. I know ultimately that was the question you were asking. I think they can be refined and can be improved. But it is an everyday daunting task. I mean, you may tell one of our players there's buried treasure in right field, here's a shovel. And, he may shovel every day for 6 days in a row, and he might put the shovel down. Well, it might have been the seventh day that he might have found the treasure. So, it's an everyday daunting task. And unfortunately, you don't get rewarded every day for those intangibles. But you and I know from being around it, those are the guys that you're cheering for and typically have long-term success as opposed to short-term success and fizzling out when they don't have those intangibles.
Well, Coach, I feel like you're not just talking to the college baseball player with that. I think you're talking to anybody, no matter what you do. I think those are all lessons that anyone can take: truck driving, baseball playing, anything.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, and I don't want to cut you off, but it's like, for us, we want our guys to be good students, and I don't have anything in my contract that I don't have a bonus. I know some coaches have that stuff, but it's self-serving. If you're a better person off the field and you have your stuff in order, it makes you a better baseball player. So we have a invested interest in making sure our guys are, doing things the right way, and inevitably, those are the best guys you coach and the best stories. And everyone's played with that one exception of a guy that kind of gets away with murder. That's probably not the right phrase to use, but gets away without doing things the right way. But, what's that guy's legacy like? And typically everyone could say, what, that guy's good, but he could be even better if he would do things the right way. So
I'm sure you've attended a limitless amount of showcases and tryouts in your life. Can you talk a little bit about the mindset a player could or should have as they're driving up to the field and going to that showcase?
Yes. I love that question. And hopefully my answer will equate to being a good one. Be yourself. There's probably other better answers, but that's my gut instinct, hardcore. Be yourself. So when you show up, be personable. You go to those things and it's so quiet, even in the dome sometimes, it's so quiet because no one wants to ruffle any feathers or seem like they're too loud or stepping on anybody's toes. Baseball is a game where you have to be comfortable in your own skin. My dad's a Cubs fan, and Joe Madden was credited for getting those guys to be comfortable with who they are, a bunch of personalities, and that's what kind of helped break the curse. And the best hockey teams you watch in the playoffs typically have some sort of like personality or team image that's come together. So that all starts with being yourself. So that needs to be step one. But it also means catcher's pop time is a great one. Every coach and scout gets so frustrated with a guy that's standing up and he's cheating. And I don't want to embarrass myself and try and get in a stance, but basically guys cheating because they want to have a faster. You can't cheat the system. You can't trick guys really, especially some of these scouts that have been doing it forever and are a smarter baseball mind than I am. So just be who you are. If you're a 2.15 pop time guy, be the best 2.15 pop time guy that's ever stepped foot on that field, and do it with a smile, ask questions, hustle out of the way when it's not your turn. When it is your turn, if they ask you your number, say it with authority. If they say your name, say it loud and proud. But for all intents and purposes, be a 2.15 guy. Don't try and cheat that system because you actually end up making yourself worse. And I think that can apply to hitting, pitching, whatever it might be. So hopefully that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. That's definitely the world that we live in. And there are so many times where, I think we finish catchers and I get crowded by a bunch of catchers that want to know what their pop time was. And it's just like, guys, like, show us the actions, show us the feet, and, let the rest take care of itself.
Yeah. And you're not going to trick anybody, and you don't want to trick anyone. I mean, what if you have your greatest day ever, or you cheat your 60 time, and we think you're a 6'5" instead of a 6'9", and so we offer you a scholarship, and you get here and you can't run as fast. We're not going to like you. I mean, to an extent, I'm trying to give a brief example, but odds of you are tricking somebody are not good. And as a matter of fact, you don't want to trick anybody. So be who you are. And if that's not good enough for the people that you like or you're interested in, then we won't use any expletives or anything, but let them go do their thing, and you do your thing, and you'll be a lot happier in the long run.
Who is the Tennessee player athlete, and what makes them unique? What makes them special?
That's a good question. I think we've worked hard to kind of build a culture here that's basically a brand name. I think when you watch SEC schools, and I've been fortunate enough to be in the conference for a handful of years, you could say Arkansas, 5 or 6 stereotypes, Florida, 5 or 6 stereotypes. And for us, since we're new, we just wanted to make sure there was something there. What that exactly is, we're still formulating that. But I think for us, we've got to be a group that outworks people. We don't have the history, at least recently, of some of these teams in our league. Different teams have different advantages, whether it be scholarship money or facilities. We're blessed here in a lot of ways, but by no means are we number one in, any of those categories I just mentioned in our league. So how are we going to catch up to those other teams? It's got to be through work ethic and, developing our players. And also, I think something we take pride in here is just enjoying the environment. I mean, we've only been here a few years. We've had almost every staff member that works here get offered other jobs. And I think the reason why we've stuck together is we have fun up here. I mean, to the point where some guys get overly sensitive with how many jabs they take in one day, but the coaches have fun. So we expect the players to do so. And I think our environment and our work ethic are two things we're trying to make very, very unique to us. And I take pride in that, but I can assure you, no team on our schedule is not working hard. And they're certainly going to work hard to beat an SEC team, whether they're in our league or not. So it's have a simple formula and then do it as best as you can. And we're in the process of doing that right now.
There's definitely those that say that culture is a strategy unto itself. Last question for you, Tony. Question number 10. When you attend an event, let's say tournament 12, is your approach to that event, let's go and let's just, include this event as part of our coverage? Or are you going to that event with a specific player in mind that you've been following leading up to the tournament itself?
Yeah, I think each event has a handful of things. I mean, that one's so well run, it's easy to be at and attend. You're going to get something out of it. But, if you're just go general, every showcase that's out there, to me, everybody's a suspect. Now, keep in mind, you probably go to an event and have earmarked 5 or 6 guys. And that's, again, the world is not exactly fair. But players and parents that are attending a showcase should not use the crutch of, well, it's political, or they already knew who they wanted to keep on the all-star team, or, who was going to get recruited or who the favorite is. We could pull up a long list of major leaguers that when they were in junior high or high school were not the guys that were earmarked, or even in college were not the guys who were the first team All-American guys right away, but they kept working, and they became that guy. So to me, everybody's a suspect, but there's only so many good players you can have in our locker room, it's overfilled now because of this virus. But overall, every team's going to have 35 or 40 guys. And there are many, many, many good players out there, as I mentioned before. And then there's a lot of guys who don't stop on that incline of improvement. They maybe catch that guy that was a little better than them the first couple of years. So you got to have your eye out for both. This guy's a no doubter. We want to jump on him, or let's follow this guy. And there's been a couple of examples for us, let's follow this guy because he looked pretty good. And then in a year or two, you may start to see that vision you had of what that kid could become, and it excites you. And next thing you know, you move on it.
That's awesome. Well, Tony, thank you for doing this. Thank you for joining us on this edition of 10 Questions powered by Honda. It is not every day that we get someone of your recruiting caliber and your background in this game. And I think it's really cool that parents up here in Canada are going to get to see your perspective and your side of things as it relates to the recruitment process, the coaching process, but just overall the people process and developing people. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you again. I appreciate it, and I'm a huge fan of how things are going up there. The play is getting so much better, and it's so well spread across all of Canada. And I think a lot of it is because this information's getting out there. So kudos to you guys, and certainly recognize how organized everything is up there too. Again, I think that's helping, kind of elevate guys in the development process. So we appreciate it. We hope to reap the benefit of it too.